Jesus, boys, girls, in-betweeners, how you doing? Reg Gambit here, and today we're doing something which I've been wanting to do for a while. A lot of people have asked for this, and I'm finally doing it. We are doing the final, definitive Juri guide. Yeah, we will. Thank you, Lucia. For Street Fighter V. This is going to be the final one that I do as an entire breakdown of the character, how to play her, what to do, things like that. Now, I should note that this is prior to, if you're watching this in the future, this is prior to the final balance patch, which is going down presumably right after Capcom Cup in 2022. That said, Juri has remained effectively unchanged for the last two and a half seasons. She's only had very, very small token changes to her, if that. In a lot of cases, she is virtually identical to how she was 2 years ago, so I do not expect that balance patch to change anything meaningful about the character. I expect that balance patch to be a huge nothing burger, and it's only going to have tiny changes, if anything. They may completely dodge her entirely. I genuinely believe that that Capcom thinks that Juri is the best balanced character in the game because they just won't fucking touch her, basically. So, there you go. That said, I want to try and keep this as lean as I can, so we're not going to be covering every single thing about the character. If you want to see breakdowns on all of the buttons, things like that, you might want to watch some of the previous tutorials that I've done. We are going to cover some of the buttons, but only the ones that are good. So if I don't talk about one of the buttons, it's because they're not good. Things like that. So we're going to have playstyle, damage, tier status, buttons, specials, V-system, when to store, Oki situations, general game plan, best matchups, and worst matchups. If you're really lucky, I might actually put timestamps for those in the video description, so you might want to test that right now. That said, let's go ahead and dive right into this. Yes. Okay. Playstyle. I have talked about this before. Juri is a spacing, neutral character with very average health. She has a good but not great walk speed. Her walk speed is good. It's certainly good. It's obviously not as good as some aggressive characters like Akuma or Karin, but it's certainly a good walk speed, forward walk speed and back walk speed. So there's not a lot to complain about there. She also has tools for almost every situation. So if you like a character who has a lot of options, Juri is certainly a good go-to character for that. But that said, Juri is not a rushdown character, nor can she be played as a defensive type. If you're the kind of person who likes being lame, or if you're the kind of person who likes really going in and harassing someone, she may wind up being a poor choice because she certainly does not excel in offense, and we'll get into that a little bit later. And her defense also is not the greatest because of the average health and average stun. So that's just something to be aware of as well. You just really need to play her as a character who hit and fades, goes in, gets damage, gets out, and picks her spots. Now, she can make life difficult for people who rely on projectiles. So characters like Ryu, Akuma, Guile, anyone who relies on a projectile. Possibly not Luke, he's still new. I'm still sussing out the Luke matchup some. His projectile is very hard to punish, but we'll get into that a little bit later again. But for the most part, as a golden rule, she is very good against projectile characters. So keep that in mind, but she has difficulty opening up characters who are designed to be weak to rush down. So your Gs, your Bisons, your Menats, etc. Juri should really just be played by people who enjoy frustrating their opponent's attempts at offense. She is the kind of character who is really just there, in my opinion, to shut down the other person's shit. If they try to get something started, you shut it down. That's how she works. She doesn't excel in offense, but what she does excel in is taking options away from her opponent. So that's what makes her a lot of fun to play. Okay, let's go ahead and dive into the damage. Now, some people believe that Juri is a secret top tier character, that she is a character that everyone is sleeping on, and she is actually way, way better than most people think. Those people are wrong. Bruh. They are just plain wrong. I can back this up by pointing to most tier lists by any reputable player will have Juri sitting around low mid-tier or mid-tier at best. And I honestly think that's a pretty good place for her in my opinion. Now, some people will say, oh, you know, Infiltration just won a CPT Asia with Juri. He bodied the shit out of Oil King. That means she's good. No, it is not a testament to how good Juri is. Infiltration winning CPT Asia is a testament to how good Infiltration is. there is a difference. He is a phenomenal player who can make any character look good. The fact that he chose Juri to look good is just something which we can all appreciate and enjoy for what it is. But don't mistake that. Don't get it twisted. It does not make her a good character all of a sudden. She's not. She is a very average character in the tier list of this game. That said, I don't really personally believe that you should really care about tier lists to begin with. I don't think tier lists are even a factor until you get to at least Diamond, which as you can see is where I am now, so I'm only just starting to scratch the surface of how tier lists affect matchups. Certainly anywhere before Diamond is really down to player skill. It's really nothing to do with limitations of your character, so don't really put too much faith in tier lists until you start getting really good at this game. And I'm not saying I'm really good at this game. I'm not. I'm just an idiot who's played it for long enough that I can get to this level. So there you go. Also, scaling is a huge issue for Juri. I'll show you why. This is my favorite example for how scaling is a huge issue for Juri. Street Fighter V is a game that was designed with basically the concept of short, sharp combos. They didn't want situations that could arise like in Street Fighter 4, we could get truly massive damage from doing really long combos in some situations. So they've added a few mechanics to really make sure that scaling hits hard very early in combos and just keeps going, and that's fine, but Juri is a character who is designed to have long combos. So for that reason, it kind of sucks to be her. So let's see here. This is basically, this is an optimal corner combo with Juri if you have 2 stores, right? If you can do it properly, that's Curse of the Commentator. Alright, 375 damage. Now, you look at that and you go, holy crap, 375 damage, meterless? That's pretty good. Yeah, that is pretty good, but using 2 stores. And the amount of times in your life where you'll have 2 stores and the corner and a jump in are going to be pretty goddamn limited. But that's fine, okay? That's damage for, that is good optimal damage for Juri in the corner. Right, now, let's say you want to be a little bit greedy, you want to try and extend the combo some, you want to do some swag, you want to throw a little bit of sparkle on top of that, right? So you're like, okay, I'm going to use my V trigger, and I'm going to use 1 bar to extend this combo. Now remember that number, 375. Right, let's extend the combo now. If you can do it properly. Again, Curse of the Commentator. We'll get there eventually, don't worry. 373 damage. So we spent 1 bar, 2 stores, and all of our V-Trigger on a combo that actually did 2 points less than the combo that preceded it. So that's pretty much Juri in a nutshell, that she can do these very long combos but gets massive diminishing returns after a certain point. So it hurts to be her, basically. You can obviously do variations on that combo where you end it with a super to try and really max things out, but unless, I mean, why would you? Honestly, just do the regular combo, finish it with a super, and get optimal damage. So it's just not worth it. So it's just something to keep in mind as well, that damage is generally a problem for Juri. It's going to be more of a problem depending on which stores you have available to you at the time. We'll get into that a little bit later, but it's just something to be aware of. Alright, let's talk about Juri's buttons. I'm going to put these on block just so you can see the frame data on them. Alright, these are just the buttons that are good. Every character has buttons which are just not very good or not particularly useful, so I'm just... Normally I would talk about those, but I'm just not even going to talk about those this time around, so trust me when I say that if I don't mention a button here, it's probably not a very good one. So let's just go over the ones that are good. Standing Light Punch. It's Juri's 3-frame. This is very important because having a 3-frame is very important for a character. It opens up punishment opportunities that would not be available to characters who have 4 frames. So it has a good range. Obviously, it hits mid, so it's fine. It hits on crouching characters. it's just generally, as far as lights go, it's very solid. There's nothing to really complain about with this button. You can try to anti-air jab with it. You're insane if you do, because anti-air jabs are a terrible idea. Alright, crouching light punch. Also good. Has a deceptively good range. Both of her lights are +2 on block. So that's the other important thing to remember, is they're both +2 on block. They're also both cancelable, so they can be cancelled into specials. Like so. So they're both good buttons in general. Staying medium punch. Staying medium punch is Juri's only medium button that is plus. It's also the only button that is plus from this point forward. Every other button we're ever going to talk about is minus. That includes all of our special moves. So get used to that. That's another reason why Juri is not really a high tier character, because she only has this button, this button, this button, and this button that are plus. That's it. Every other button, including special moves, including V-System, unless you're talking about V-Trigger 1, is minus. So don't, if you like having plus frames, Juri is not the character to use. That said, so this is her standing medium punch. As I said, it is +2. It links into standing medium kick, which we'll talk about in a second. But on hit, that will link. We'll do a 3 hit like that. It's a good button. It moves her. It doesn't move her forward, sorry, but it does have, again, deceptively good reach. And as I said, it's plus, so it's just a good harassment button, if nothing else. It's also, as far as a single hit button, it's reasonably easy to confirm off of. I don't do it enough personally. If you've ever watched my Juri videos, I don't use it for confirms very often, because I'm not very good at it, but I'm trying to work on that. It's just a bad habit that I've formed, so that's an L for me. But don't do that. Don't be like Red Gambit. Learn how to use this button properly, because it is a very strong button, and I've probably lost a lot of matches because of that. Right, staying medium kick. Right, now, we've talked about how Juri is, as I said, a mid-tier character, that she's not that great, etc, etc, etc. This button is... If she didn't have this button, she'd be much further down the tier list. Standing medium kick is a god button. It is one of the best normal buttons in the game, hands down, and I will fight anyone on that if they say this button is trash. It is god tier. This button is amazing. Look at the range of us. Look at the range. Just look at this shit. This harassment tool. It is incredible. It will outrange buttons like... You know how Kami players like to walk around and do this to harass you at mid-range? Guess what? Juri's button goes out further. Guess what? Juri's button comes out faster. It is a 5-frame startup button. 5 frames for this damage, and it hits twice, which means it will go through armored moves, unless they have multi-hit armor, obviously. And the first hit is also cancelable, so it cancels into specials as well. It is an absolute god button. And even if they block it, which obviously they will at certain times, it's -4, but it has so much pushback, it's going to be almost impossible to punish. At point blank range. At max range, forget about it. No one's punishing that. So it is absolute god tier as far as harassment buttons go. And again, I will fight anyone who says otherwise. I will fight you in the street. In the actual street, not in the game. We will go out in the street and have 50 cuts. I'm telling you. It's gonna happen. Right. Now, that said, let's talk about a different button. Crouching medium kick. I could spend all day talking about that button. It's fantastic. It is good range. Not as good range as standing medium kick, as you can see. But it is Juri's party starter. Because it still has okay range. Not great. It actually is a little bit shorter than it looks like it should hit. But it is Juri's party starter because obviously it hits low and it is cancelable. So it will cancel into things like Heavy Fireball. Which is the party starter for a reason. We'll get into that when we talk about the V-Trigger system. But it is, generally, it's -6 obviously, but you're really only going to be using this max range to try and catch people low and cancel to something else. So you're always going to be canceling this. You're never just going to be throwing this out randomly. Unless you're me, obviously, because I'm a moron. But if you're smart, you'll be canceling this into something else, which is even safer anyway, so it doesn't matter. Alright, standing heavy punch. This button is, it serves a few purposes. It is minus, obviously, it's only -3 on block, which is pretty respectable for a fierce button. So ain't no one punching that at max range. That said, it is cancelable again. So it cancels into a special, and it also functions as an anti-air. So it is one of Juri has two main anti-air buttons if you don't count her DP. So as far as anti-air normals, this one is not bad. It's not the go-to anti-air, but if you are caught flat-footed and you want to try and, if you're not expecting the jump in, but you want to try and contest it, this is probably the better option for her other button, which we'll talk about in just 1 second. So it's good. It's generally, you can just use it for like neutral situations. You can just buffer it into something. If you're just hoping to whiff punish something, it's probably going to be your go-to whiff punish button just because of the range that it has and the fact that it's cancelable. Because it's going to go out further than the stand NK. So yeah, it's a good one, and obviously it has high priority because it's a fierce button as well. So it's definitely recommended for that, for those kind of situations, for sure. Now, the other anti-air button is her crouching fierce punch, which is this. This comes out slower. It has no forward hitbox at all. It is all vertical. Look at this. Still not hitting. Still not hitting. Still not hitting. Finally hits. It is pure vertical hitbox on this button. So the only use you're going to have for this button is either it does crush counter. So if you want to use it in a crush counter situation, you can use it. I prefer to use it in HK, but you can use it as a crush counter, but it will also crush counter jump ins. So in the event that they jump in and they get crush countered, you can then follow up with a DP or store into DP. So you have options there. So I can give a quick example of that. Juri actually gets a lot of time to play around with on this one. So if you turn counter state on and put them in jumping, so you can actually get a store. You can cancel that into store and still have time to DP afterwards. It's a little bit crazy. Turn that crouch. So it's a good anti-air button. It's not the best. It does start up quite slow though. It has a fairly slow startup, so it's the kind of anti-air button you want to be using in situations where you know they're already airborne. Unless you have God tier reflexes, which I do not. Alright, stand HK. This is -4, which again is respectable for a heavy button. It also moves Juri forward. So it's good on 2 fronts. It also crush counters. If guard was turned off, it would at least. The follow-ups you get from this are pretty limited. You can only, unless it's a point-blank range, you can only dash up afterwards. So at max range, you can dash up and get a jab into your combo of choice. If you don't drop it, which I think do all the time tonight, but there you go. It's late. I'm recording this at 1 AM. That's my excuse. So that's basically your follow-up option there. I'm not going to go through all the follow-up options because that's just something to explore on your own. And like I said, I want to keep this lean and mean. So that's basically it. You just need to be careful about spacing this, especially against Ryu, because Ryu can punish this with standing light kicks. So can Sakura. And both those characters have cancelable standing light kicks. So if you space this wrong, you will eat a standing light kick into a Tatsu, which is something you never want. You can do it still at max range. It does if you do it like at absolute max range. So I'm talking like kind of this distance. At this distance, his standing light kick and her standing light kick will not reach. But at any other distance, you are not safe. So you want to be very careful in those particular matchups. Her sweep, not much to say about her sweep. I just thought I'd mention it because it does have a good range. It is not the best range. It is not Karin range. But it is good range. So if you're the kind of person who likes to go for long range, max range sweeps, in the hope that they won't be able to counter sweep you back, she's not bad for that. I personally don't like to use it for that reason, but you can do it. Just obviously, like I said, be aware if you're using it as characters who also have long range sweeps, it's not safe, but it can be safe depending on the matchup. Alright, jumping medium kick. Jumping medium kick is only being mentioned here because it is her main cross-up tool. If you actually hit it. Like that. Now, the issue is with this is that it has to be it's fairly obvious. The animation is not very ambiguous as to whether it's going to cross up or not. Like that hit in front, that hit behind. It's very hard to get an ambiguous cross-up with this. So I'm not actually a huge fan of using it for this, just because if you go for this, 9 times out of 10 you will get blocked. So it just doesn't, it's just designed to not be very ambiguous. Her jumping light kick is more ambiguous. That's which way I'll go. So she has 2 cross-ups, which is something that most characters can't boast, which is nice. So I generally prefer to go with the light one, but listen to your heart. Go for whichever one you prefer. Jumping medium punch. This is worthy of mention for 2 different reasons. One of them is that it leaves the opponent in a float state if they're jumping. So if they're jumping, it leaves them in float state. That's the first thing. The second thing that's worth mentioning is that it is part of her air target combo. She has multiple target combos. Her air target combo is jumping medium kick into heavy kick. Oh, sorry, jumping medium punch into heavy kick. I take that back. Like so. That used to cause knockdown. It got patched, I think, in Season 4, so it does not cause knockdown. It is good for people like Ryu players. If the Ryu player you are fighting is dumb enough to use anti-air parries, which is something you should absolutely punish them for. So if they like to parry your jump-ins, try and get a counter. You can do this to basically blow up their attempt to parry you. So I highly recommend it for that. It's not very useful for much else. If you're going for a combo, obviously it's hitting twice, so you're adding to combo scaling, which is why it's not really good for jump-ins. Not really much else to say beyond that. It's just good for blowing up that. It's good for blowing up any kind of parry attempt, any kind of counter attempt. That's basically it. It will still get blown up by regular anti-airs though, so use it. It's situational. It won't come up often, but it's good to know when you have it there. Alright, let's talk about her 4 beam punch.
Let's get it started.
Sorry, not 4 beam punch, 4 beam kick. Why did I type 4 beam punch? 4 beam kick. It's her overhead. It's a command overhead. Because Juri has multiple command normals, like I said. This has a very good range. It is an extremely long range overhead. Look how far back this is hitting from. It's kind of sickening. Now, that is the good part of this. Bad part of this is that it has the universal minus. So if we go to guard all, it is -7, as are all command overheads. So that's fine. I'm not against that. It's the same minus you'll get on every other overhead in the game. That's not a command overhead. That's not a special command overhead like Akuma's forward fierce punch. Or is it forward? Whatever. It's, you know what I'm fucking talking about, where he jumps in the air. He has so many command normals, it's stupid. The downside of this is that on hits, it is 0. So if this connects, you are not at advantage. Most command overheads do leave you most overheads. It's not really a command overhead, it's just an overhead. Most overheads do leave you at an advantage, this one does not. So your best bet after overhead, if it hits, is to immediately press jab, because it's 3 frame. And it's plus on block. And because this carries you forward, you'll be in prime position to just throw out a jab. So worst comes to worst, unless they woof out a special or an EX or whatever, you'll get a trade situation, which is what happens a lot of the time. Because people will usually immediately contest after an overhead. So just keep that in mind. It's basically the best use you'll have for this is finishing a round, because no one expects to get overheaded from back here. If you have the life lead and they're all lost a little bit of health, and they're just trying to crouch block and make you do something stupid, they're not going to see this coming. And if they do see it coming, then if you're really lucky, you'll be far enough away that it won't matter. But otherwise, yeah, it's good for finishing rounds. That's all I can really say. I'm not going to dwell on that anymore. The other target combo that Juri has, before I forget about it, because I didn't write it down, is forward or back, medium punch, heavy punch. The Juri actually swears and tells her to piss off. Obviously, being a target combo, this is unsafe on block, as all target combos are. So it's -12, so you do not want to throw this out randomly. However, it does have its uses primarily during V-Trigger 1, so we'll talk about it a little bit more later. But if you want to use it, you can use it up in crush counter situations. So if you are in a close, if you do get a close crush counter off like a DP, for example, and we restart the battle here. So we go here. If I do it right. You can do that. So you can walk up after a crush counter, do target combo, get a free store, which is very important, and then you can do a DP afterwards to finish things off. So that's the primary use for it, I find. That and V-Trigger 1 are the primary uses for target combo, is either a punish or as part of V-Trigger 1. So that's it for target combo 1. It's good, but it's very situational because of those minus frames. Alright, let's talk about the final command normal that Juri has, which is turn counter off, back heavy kick. Back heavy kick hits twice. It is cancelable off both hits. If I do it right. It's too early in the morning, I'll tell you that much. There we go, that's off the second hit. That's off the first hit. So it's also -2. So it's basically identical to Ryu's back heavy kick. It's literally identical. Frame data might slightly vary, but it is functionally identical in that regard. It's very good for block striking situations. It's not good necessarily on hit, because on a hit, if you're good at confirming, you're probably better off using target combo 1, but which is this one obviously. But on block, it's just very good for putting some space between you and the opponent and getting a free store. So that's something to keep aware of as well. But if you are a low-level player and you're not particularly very good with Juri yet, this is a very good hit confirm tool. So if you're like, you know, silver, bronze kind of territory, this is kind of a valid combo. Alright, that's it for all the buttons. Let's talk about all of her specials. Juri has a few of them. We'll talk about her fireballs first. So Juri has to store all of her fireballs. As you know, you've seen it, you've heard. You know it's just how she is. Juri is a store-based character, and Capcom really like to stick to that theme. She has 3 fireballs, they all do different things. Her light fireball is the only one that is safe on block. It is -2. The important thing to note is that it has virtually no block stun. It is... If you want to do light fireball and then dash up and get pressure afterwards, you have to time it very well, because the block stun on this thing is so minuscule, it is virtually non-existent. So keep that in mind. There have been many times where I have thrown a fireball and be like, aha, I'll jump in now, and use that as a free approach, and they block the fireball and then anti-aim me anyway, because I didn't time it closely enough. So just be aware of that. Also, her fireballs do cancel into one another. So you can do, for example, heavy into medium. It's something to keep note of. So you can even do heavy into medium to low, or light, like that. If you want to use all 3 stores at once, you don't want to use all 3 stores at once. That's stupid. Now that said, her medium one is quite unsafe on block. -4. Her heavy one is very unsafe on block. It's -6. So ideally what you want to do, if you are the kind of person who, like we talked about before, is someone who is known to buffer things. So if you want to do, like, say for example in neutral, you're buffering out Stand Fierce and Heavy Fireball, you can do that, but if it catches them while they're blocking because you didn't space it right, you need to have the emergency break of having a light fireball to make it safe. So go from being -6 to being -2, which means you are safe. That's kind of it for the fireballs for the most part. The light fireball does not travel full screen. It peers out after a while. It is worth noting that she does have very short recovery on that fireball. A lot of fireballs have, I think it's about 36 frames of recovery. It varies from character to character, but as a general rule, most fireballs are around the 34 to 36 frames on recovery for a just a raw throw of a fireball. Juri's is actually lower than that. I think, let me grab my phone, it has the frame data on there and I can't remember it off the top of my head. But it is lower than that. Let's just grab it right now. This is well prepared, by the way, as you can see. I'm not doing this in the middle of the night because I have nothing better to do. Alright, almost there. Like Store. It is only 18 frames of recovery. So it is significantly lower recovery than a lot of fireballs out there. It is probably one of, if not the lowest recovery fireball in the game. So Juri is very safe throwing this out in neutral. Obviously, one of the main drawbacks of having a projectile character is that when you throw a fireball, if they jump, you're going to get blown up because they're going to jump in and hit you with a full combo. If they jump in, unless it's timed perfectly, you will generally have time to block. So it's very good in that regard. She is very hard to punch on her fireballs. That said, you don't want to get in the habit of throwing then releasing, because then you do become a lot easier to hit with a jump in. The actual store also does actually work as a hit by itself. It is a strike, which is -2, which is great. It will hit people, but it has a terrible hitbox, so don't rely on that for a second. It will also the store will cancel out other projectiles, but it's not really great for that. I wouldn't really try that very often because people just keep throwing more fireballs at you. I mean, you have full stores, you can't keep doing it. That's really it for all those. EX version of that is -2. Get used to that because, like I said, we're out of plus frames. We exhausted those a while ago. It does have a projectile hitbox on it by itself, so it can hit other projectiles and cancel them out as it goes. I wouldn't try it for that. It's not worth spending a bar just to cancel out a fireball when Juri has much better options. This is really just mostly a tool for either activating V-trigger or for looking for punish situations, things like that. It's not really great for too much else. Juri is a weird kind of character in that she is actually quite good at building meter, but she has very few reasons to spend it a lot of the time. It's kind of weird. So it definitely, like, it is a useful tool. It's good for combos, it's good for damage, but it's just not great at anything. It doesn't really excel at any particular task. It's just there to get a bit more damage a lot of the time. You'll use it if you don't. It's good for when you don't have stores and you need a fireball, and that's kind of about it. All right, let's talk about her Roidensatsu, which is her wheel kick. This one. I always laugh when Seth players use a tandem engine to steal this move from me because it's fucking worthless. It's really bad. Basically, the long story short is that in Season 1, Juri's V-Skill 1, which we'll get into later, was not as good as it is now. They did buff it. So this move was really her go-to move for going over fireballs. It does not have an anti-fireball hitbox, it just goes over fireballs. That's it. It's unbelievably minus on block, as you can see, it's -6, which makes it really bad. Every version is -6, and as an added bonus, if they're crouching, the heavy version can actually go over them and miss them entirely. The other versions won't. But heavy will sometimes go over the opponent, which makes it really frustrating because now you're even more than -6 because now you've just whiffed. So it's really, really, really bad. It's probably one of the most trash special moves in the game. The only thing you'll ever really use a non-EX version of this move for is it sets up in a super. If you do it properly. That's really the only purpose that it has, unfortunately. Yeah, that's it. There are other things we can talk about with that, but we'll get to that in the skill system. I'll keep this moving. The EX version of it is more useful, however. The EX version tracks, so it will never go over the opponent. It will always go exactly to them. So it's good in that regard. It puts them into a launch state, so you are able to follow up afterwards. That's kind of it. It also, the other really important thing about this is that it has a completely anti-fireball hitbox. So from start to finish, from frame 1 to the final frame, this thing is completely projectile invincible. So if anyone ever tries to throw a fireball at you even when you're waking up, if you have those situations where people are trying to use meaty fireballs to force you to block or to mix you up like a Delsim or an Ed player would, or even a Gal player to get a free approach, after knockdown, this will just go straight through it. It is really good for just avoiding any kind of fireball pressure you do not want to deal with. That said, another thing to mention is that all of the versions of the Warden Satsu, including the EX version, have no hitbox until she lands. This is very important. It means the entire time that Juri is airborne, she is not in active frames, she is in startup frames. She has no hitbox until she lands. Until she touches the ground, she has no hitbox, which means it doesn't matter if her leg is going through their head. On the way down, she can be hit out of it. It is only when her leg touches the ground that she gets a hitbox. Which means you'll get a lot of very frustrating situations where you do a move, which, as I said, the leg is clearly going through their head, but they press the button and knock you out of it. So that is very frustrating. The other really frustrating thing about this move is that even though Juri is clearly airborne throughout the entire move, the game says she is not. According to the game, Juri has a grounded hurtbox while she is moving through the air. So even though her physical model is moving through the air, her hurtbox is located on the ground, which means that she can be not only hit out of it, she can be thrown out of it, because she is still on the ground and not airborne. So you can actually, if a character has a grab super, they can grab her out of this and they don't even need to be airborne for it.
Let's get it started.
So that is also extremely frustrating. So that's two huge downsides to this move. Basically, like I said, don't use the normal version ever unless you're doing super.
This will end your suffering. Just
Or potentially finishing a combo and you don't have a heavy fireball to finish the combo, or you don't want to spend it. Like that. Or use the EX version to go through projectiles. That's it. Those are the only times you'll ever use this move. Never throw it out raw for anything. Ever, unless... The only time you should ever throw it out raw is when it's EX. That's it. Alright, moving on from that. Let's talk about her DP, the Tensinren. She has 3 versions of it. They all act differently. The light one stays on the ground. It moves forward, it does not go up. That is her light DP. Her medium DP is her anti-air. And her heavy DP is just a damage ender. Right, the properties of this one are... There's a lot to go through, so I'm going to try and keep this short. It has different recovery depending whether they're standing or crouching. So if they're blocking it and standing, it's -3. If they're crouching and blocking it, it's -8. Something to be aware of. It is a good max range harassment tool. In neutral, throwing this out at max range is not a terrible idea because it's a special, it has priority, it's just good in that regard. It doesn't cause knockdown obviously, which is a little bit of a bummer, but it's just a good, like you can harass by just basically doing a stand medium kick and then following up with a light Tensinren. So you can really just let people know that you own this particular space right here and there's not much they can do about it. That's really the primary purpose for it. It does cancel the super, I don't like doing it personally. And it cancels off the first hit, not the second. So there is that. The medium version is just your standard anti-air DP. It has the universal properties of an anti-air DP, which is it has startup, which is anti-air invincible. That's if you like using DPs as anti-airs, this is your go-to. Be aware of the fact that the hitbox for it flickers on and off as she goes up, so there will be rare situations where you get knocked out of it for no reason, just because she was facing the wrong way when they hit her. It'll happen, and you'll be really frustrated when it happens because you are anti-airing them and they're hitting you out of it anyway. So thank you to whatever Capcom designer decided that needed to happen. Whatever Capcom designer just went, oh, in this game where people teleport and throw fireballs, we need to be realistic about having a hitbox when her legs are facing away from the opponent. Her heavy one, like I said, That's just the damage ender. It also gives good Oki, which we'll get into a little bit later. But you primarily use the heavy one in combos. That's it. It has anti-fireball properties, but who uses anti-fireball properties on a DP? Especially when Juri has better options for anti-fireball things. The EX version is exactly what you'd expect. It is a fully invincible reversal, which means it is your go-to get-off-me tool when you're in neutral, or preferably when you're waking up. That's kind of it. That's really it. It's fully invincible wake up. That's kind of, it's what do you expect? It's an invincible DP. It has all the things you expect from an invincible DP. That's it. All right, that is it for all of her special moves. So enjoy those. Okay, let's talk about her V system, V skills, and V triggers. V skill 1 is the I don't know what you really call it. It's this. I forget what the actual name for it is, but like I said, it's still 1 in the morning. It has 2 states. This is the normal state for it. The normal state for it is virtually worthless. It's very slow, it's very reactable, and it's very, very, very negative on block. -10. So it does obviously side switch. So if you're playing against low-level players, they will get hit by this sometimes. But even if they do get hit by it, it's just not worth it because the damage is only 80 points. It causes a knockdown, which knocks them far away enough that you can't really do anything afterwards. And if they block it, the punish is going to be far worse than the damage you dealt out. So it's just really not worth it. What makes this move actually worth a damn is the ability to store it. So if you hold down the store and double tap forward or backwards, you will actually store the V trigger. You can tell it's stored because we now have the V skill 1 flashing, which is something added in later patches. When you store it, it becomes a lot more dangerous. It becomes a lot faster. It hits twice. It hits in front, then behind. And it also hits from full screen. The previous version does not hit from full screen. So this is very good and very bad in a lot of ways. The very good parts of it are, as I said, it's a lot faster. It's virtually impossible to react to. People really have to predict this is coming because it is, especially online, it is almost impossible to react to unless you have the reflexes of a mongoose. It's just not going to happen. It also is, once it goes in active frames, it does have startup frames, and it has a few of them, but once it goes in active frames, it will go through projectiles. So once it is out of active startup frames and into active, it is fully projectile invincible until she hits the opponent. Once she hits the opponent, she is out of projectile invincibility. So that can lead to some interesting situations if Yuri is sitting on top of one of his mirrors, because she can sometimes go through it and sometimes she'll get hit before she goes past the mirror. It's kind of weird. That's something to be aware of. But this is basically going to be your go-to anti-fireball deterrent, because once you see a fireball come out, once you get good at reacting to when fireballs appear on the screen, you will be able to punish them consistently. Keep in mind that because it has startup, you generally do not want to throw it out around this range. At this range, when they throw a fireball, you will be in startup before you're able to react to it properly, and you'll get knocked out of startup and you'll have to store it all over again. So when you are punishing fireballs, you want to do it from far away. Generally around this kind of territory is your go-to anti-fireball range. And it's good because that way people don't get to approach Juri for free. Like, Chun-Li does not get to throw a light fireball and then walk up behind it. Laura does not get to throw a light thunderclap and walk up behind it. So on and so forth. Like, Guile doesn't get to do a light boom. Things like that. It's there as a deterrent. Like I said, at this range, you're better off using Ronin Satsu if you want to try and punish a fireball. The downside to this move is that it gets more minus after you charge it. You'd think it would get less minus, it actually gets more minus. So we were at -10 before, now we're at -18. So do not throw this move out randomly. Just don't do it. You can do it if it's gonna finish the round. It might be worth it. If you just think you'll catch them off guard, if they're doing like staggered walking towards you, and you think you've picked up on their rhythm, you can throw it out to try and finish a round, but you're going to eat such a punish if they block it. it's very much a calculated risk. It really is. You're gonna have to use your own discretion on that one. I do it from time to time. I'm not saying other people should do it though, because as I said, it's just so punishable on block. It's sickening. So just be aware of that. All right, moving on. V skill 2. V skill 2 is another store because Capcom are nothing if not consistent.
Oh yeah.
This time she gets her V skill glowing and also gets a little ankle bracelet. It's very cute, don't you think? It throws out one of these. This V skill is not very good, in my opinion. I have spent a while looking at it. I will not say I'm an expert on it. There are people out there who can definitely use it better than me, but from my experience, it is not very good. It really serves because, first of all, it's -2 on block. So, if you're thinking you can throw this out and use it as a pressure tool, you can't, because you throw it out and it's their turn. Because once again, Capcom are nothing if not consistent. The other thing about this is that people will tell you, and I've had people try to convince me in comments and videos, that this can be used as a mix-up tool. And even I have made a video on how you can use this as a mix-up tool. Don't do it. Just don't. If you think you can get a knockdown and throw this out and then start doing mix-up shenanigans, don't. Because it's just not good for that. It's just really not good for that. You know, you want to do like this and then flip around the other side. It's not worth it because there's just so many ways it can go wrong. Basically, if they change their way, like a lot of these setups for V skill 2 rely on them having a certain type of wake up. If they go for regular wake up, there is usually where your setup opportunity is, right? If they go for delayed wake up, it will ruin the timing of the mix up. If they go for delayed wake up, if they go for back wake up rather, it will really ruin the timing of the mix up. Now they can do V shift as well, which will make things even worse. So it's just not good as a mix-up tool. It looked that way initially when it came out. We were all a little bit excited that it had that potential, but it doesn't. So, you know, you can try to fight me in the comments on this if you want to, but I will prove you wrong mathematically, and we'll just go on with our lives. So, the only other real advantage of this move is that it is cancelable from fireballs.
Oh yeah.
So if you do like for example, a heavy fireball, you can cancel into that. We do as a combo here. You get the extra hit and you get more of an Oki situation. But that's it. It's not really great. It is better than doing a light fireball because a light fireball is a true block string, whereas this is a frame trap. So if they are the kind of person who is going to press a button after the heavy fireball, maybe, but like a lot of the time people won't do it because they'll wait till the string's completely finished before they press a button. So it's still, unless they're someone who's really into mashing buttons, when you know those people do exist, you're not going to find a use for it. So I don't like it. The best use I really have for this when I'm using it is it actually works as a shield for getting out of the stores. So you can throw this out. Sorry, I'll do that again. You can throw this out and get a couple of stores, or even get all 3 stores behind it. So if you want to just get your stores, you know, they're probably just going to wait for it to dissipate before they approach you. So it's a good way to just get all 3 stores for free. That's kind of the best use I have for it. I really only use this V skill in matches where V skill 1 is completely worthless. So if you're fighting a grappler like Zangief, V skill 1 is worthless.
Let's get it started.
It's kind of those situations. If you're fighting Balrog, V skill 1 is worthless. So that's the only time where I'll really use V skill 2 is when I have no other choice. Because it's not a bad V skill, it's just not really good in any way, shape or form. It just exists. It's there, it's a thing. Alright, moving on. Let's go to, actually I'll stay on this, we'll go to, with V trigger 1, is the Feng Shui engine. This is Juri's best V trigger. It allows her to cancel normals and other normals. Like so. So normals that would not normally link, now link. As I said before, this is a game which punishes you for doing long combos, and this is a V trigger that gives you long combos.
Bruh.
So it's frustrating in that regard. You want to truly try to limit what ideally you want to try and get at least 2, if not 3 combos out of each activation. So generally you want to try and really try to limit how many hits you use because it's ticking down and using hits makes it tick down faster. Another thing that's worth mentioning about this V-Trigger is that when you are in V-Trigger 1, you get free fireballs, but they are very expensive free fireballs because if you link 2 moves, you only use about 1/8 of the bar. If you use a free fireball, you've used about 1/4 of the bar. So free fireballs are very expensive. You only want to use the free fireballs when you're getting damage. Do not use them. Do not just activate your bar and start throwing out free light fireballs. Because you'll diminish your V-Trigger in no time and then you've wasted it. And V-Trigger 1 is absolutely Juri's biggest comeback tool. It is your sole hope for winning some matches. It's really that big of a deal for Juri. Because it forces people to block and they don't know when to stop blocking. And that makes it very valuable because it's the only time that Juri gets free pressure. As I said before, she is -2 on almost everything, if not more, but when she has access to this, because each move cancels into the next, you never know when it's going to when the string's going to end. So I could throw out, 5 standing heavy kicks in a row, and they could block all of those because at some point I'm going to do a standing heavy kick into a fireball, and they're not going to know when the fireball's coming. So really, a smart player will try to block and run your V-Trigger out. So that is something to be very aware of. Another thing to be very aware of is that this V-Trigger comes with a risk. It makes her moves more minus than they already are, which is kind of ridiculous. Normally a standing heavy kick is -4. If you do stand medium and stand heavy, it is now -7. So moves that were unsafe become more unsafe. It's Capcom, I suppose it's their way of trying to balance out this already not spectacular. It's a good V-Trigger, it's one of the better V-Triggers in the game, it's certainly not one of the best V-Triggers in the game, but it's good. It would be better if they didn't do this. So I strongly, it's something to be aware of, but the thing is that you do need to risk it. When you are in this V-Trigger, you do need to risk canceling into other buttons which are unsafe, because it not only is it the only way you're going to get pressure on the opponent, but it also, if the opponent is blocking a lot, it is the only way you'll coax them into not blocking, because if they see you doing this, into this, over and over and over again, they'll be sitting there thinking to themselves, holy shit, that's 3 times in a row I missed out on a -7 punish. I gotta, like, blow Juri up next time she does that. And guess what? Next time you do that, you put a fireball on the end of it. So when they try to blow it up, they get hit with a fireball instead. So it's a calculated risk, but it's one that usually pays off, because smart players will block and wait for the time and run out. If they're blocking, then that gives you are free to do whatever you want. You can start doing a lot of moves that don't cancel to frustrate them even more, because now they have to wait longer for the V-Trigger to run out. You can start just doing this. You can start throwing out stand medium kicks that don't cancel in anything. You can start throwing out overheads if they're crash blocking. Things like that. It's all just it is, the potential of this V-Trigger is really limited by how creative you are. It's one of the V-Triggers that gives you the most freedom in this game, because at any given time, you are just free to link together moves and to test whether your opponent is willing to block them or not. It is 1,000 times better than Zeku's V-Trigger, which does the same thing, but it's just worse in every front, basically. Because once Zeku commits to the string, he has to finish the string. He has no choice. If he's not finishing the string, he's wasting his V-Trigger. Whereas Juri can just not do it. If she doesn't want to, she can just stop right there. She can just, stop right there. She doesn't have to do anything she doesn't want to do. So it's very, very good in that regard. All right. That's really it for that V-Trigger. It's something you're gonna have to really practice and see how you like it, and see how much you can make it dance. That is ultimately the question of how valuable that V-Trigger is to you. Alright, let's go to V-Trigger 2. Garbage. Pure garbage. Absolutely dumpster fire V-Trigger. Again, if this is not the worst V-Trigger in the game, I will fight you. It is atrocious. All it does is, if we set our critical gauge to being normal, and we restart the battle, we activate this. We are now draining Lucia's V-Trigger to fill our own. Oh, sorry, draining her critical bar, rather, I should say. If it drained a V-Trigger, it would actually be useful. It doesn't. It drains her critical bar. It's garbage for so many reasons. Let me count the ways. First of all, it does not work when Juri is airborne. Only works when she's on the ground. Your V-Trigger bar is still going down, but your EX gauge is not going up. Second of all, the range is just not very good. She has to be in their face, and as I said earlier, Juri is a character who does not work in a sustained offense capacity. She does not have the frame data to allow her to constantly be in her opponent's face. What's going to happen is you're going to activate this V-Trigger. You might get a combo off of it. Like, for example, like so. But by the time they've gotten up, you've already lost a third of your V-Trigger bar. So it's complete garbage in that regard. The next thing is that the actual activation itself, it's +2, but that's it. Like you block, you get +2, and that's it. After that, they have to just really, they're just gonna get out of dodge. It's just not that good. So it's nice. They did buff it in a later season. In previous seasons, this did not give you free stores when it started up. It now does. So it's nice that you get full stores when you activate this. Still not worth it, in my opinion. The third thing is that, as I mentioned earlier in this video, Juri is a character who is good at building bar, but has very few reasons to actually use it a lot of the time. Because
let's get it started.
EX Fireball is -2 on block, so you're really gonna want to throw this out. It doesn't travel forward fast enough. It's not Uri's Chariot Tackle, right? If this was Uri's Chariot Tackle, it'd be great. But it's not. It travels slower and doesn't go as far. We have no meter. Where are we? Here we go. So it's not very good in that regard. Roden Sasu, like I said, is very easy to interrupt. It doesn't travel full screen. It's quite slow. If they see it coming out, they will react to it. So again, it's not very good unless you're using it in a specific situation, and obviously DP is not very good unless you're using it as a reversal or as a damage ender. So Juri just doesn't have, she doesn't have EX moves which she can just throw out. It's not a Ryu EX Fireball. It's not a Chariot Tackle. It's not an EX Scissor Kick. It's not one of those moves where you can just throw it out and get a good return because you're getting plus frames, or you're getting a move which is so fast it's difficult to react to.
Let's get it started.
She just doesn't have much use for meter. She doesn't. It's just the way it goes. More things that are wrong with this. Doesn't work when they're being thrown. They will only lose meter when they're back on the ground. Or back on their feet, I should say. So there's that. It's just not good. There's other things I can go into, but I want to keep this moving forward, so I guess I'll leave it there. Alright, let's go into when to store fireballs. We're going to keep this quick because I want to wrap this up.
Let's get it started.
I think we're going to go blocking. Yes, we are. Alright, when to store fireballs. There's really, beyond where I showed you in combos earlier, where you can store fireballs, easy confirms on block is when you just... I hit the wrong button there. There we go. Back heavy kick is good for storing fireballs. So if you go for a jump in or a cross up and they block it, do back heavy kick in the store. It pushes them quite far back, and it's -2 anyway, so all you've done is reset neutral and gotten yourself a free store in the process. You can do it on hit. On hit it also works as well, because it puts it into a launch state where you can do an EX4 afterwards. That is good for a reason which we'll get into in a second, but that is the other primary place you'll want to use that. So on block or on hit, it's a good tool. There's a lot of times where personally, I will go for an obvious jump in. And I mean obvious in the sense that I want them to block it. Like if it hits, great, I'll take the damage. But I want them to block it anyway. I'm doing it obviously because I want to get a store without risk. And I am prepared to sacrifice pressure to get this situation where I get a jump in into a either free store or a free store into a combo. Beyond that, as I said, you can use V-Skill 2 as a shield, or you can just back off and just store fireballs like you would normally. Obviously, when you're at the edge of the screen, you're fairly safe to just store fireballs. The store animation is fairly quick. It's quite fast compared to other store. Like if you store Luke's V-Skill, for example, Luke's V-Skill store is much slower than this. So it's fairly risk-free in a lot of situations. You can get jumped on. They can jump in and blow you up, but it requires very specific timing. So that's kind of where you want to get your stores. In terms of storing your V-Skill,
Let's get it started.
yeah, V-Skill 1, sorry, I should say. Oh god.
Ready?
This one, because it's actually fairly fast,
Ready?
because you can cancel it at any time.
Ready?
You don't have to wait till it's stored to cancel it. You can cancel it before the store. For restart,
Ready?
I didn't get a store.
Ready?
I didn't get a store.
Ready?
I got a store. Because she can cancel at any time with a forward dash or back dash, it is very versatile in terms of when she can get a store. Again, it's not like Luke, where when Luke stores his V-Skill, he has to go through the full animation, which makes him very exposed. In addition to that, if someone jumps in on you while you're storing, you can just let it go. If they go to jump in to try and get a combo, you can just let it go. Best case scenario is that they jump in and get hit by the V-Skill. Worst case scenario is they jump in, they miss, and so do you, and you land on the other side of the screen. You land on the other side of the screen, you reset neutral, and you go through the whole process again. So this is very good. You can do it after actually a knockdown as well. So if you get a knockdown, you can just immediately store again because it knocks them so far away. I like to do this a lot because there's not much Juri can do with knockdown from V-Skill 1. It knocks them so far away, you're not getting Oki off of it. If they do quick rise, you're not getting Oki off of that. So the best thing you can really do after a successful V-Skill 1 is store another V-Skill 1. Just be aware there are characters who can blow that up if there are characters who have long-range specials, like say, obviously Chariot Tackle, or Laura's EX Elbow, or even just a regular Tatsu from Ryu. They can wake up and go straight into special, and they will catch you if you're not ready for it. So just be aware of that. Some characters are good at punishing that if you do it too often. So, but overall, just whenever you feel like you're safe enough, just go for a store of V-Skill 1. V-Skill 2? Kind of the same rules.
Oh yeah.
It's unlike this, you can't cancel this with a dash. So Juri has to go through the full animation
Oh yeah.
before she does it, and she can't store it again until she's let go of it. V-Skill 1 can be stored over and over again if you want to. It's a waste of time, but you can do it. Whereas this, she has to release before she can do it again, and she can't dash throughout that. So you have to be a little bit more cautious because obviously it has a set animation which can be blown up, but for the most part it's still fairly fast as far as stores go, so it's not that bad. Just make sure you're probably far away when you do it. Okay, situations and setups. If you're the kind of person who really likes characters who can get a knockdown and then have a set series of animations they can do, like a stand medium punch or a stand medium kick, and then be able to press a fierce button, and that fierce button will melee them on wake up, you are shit out of luck because Juri don't got fuck in that regard. Juri has many moves that give her Oki. Like, you get tons of, even with a quick rise in this. Like DP, you are well and truly ready to get in their face after a knockdown from a DP. But in terms of actual meaty setups, Juri only has one that I believe is worth talking about, which is after EX4. After EX4, if you dash up and do crouching light jab, it will meaty. Now you might think to yourself, crouching light jab by itself is pretty shitty for a meaty setup, and you are right, but it does set up for a counter hit combo. So if we take that off, and we turn counter on, just for the sake of argument, after this, I turn the on guard on. There we go. After this, it gives you a setup into a 3-hit combo if it is on counter hit. Even better still, it sets you up for another EX Fua. If you do it right. And you can repeat the process again. So it's very good for people who like to check dash-ins after knockdowns because they think that you don't have a tool to get a meaty after a knockdown from the EX Fuha, and when in fact you do. That is really the only meaty setup that I feel like is worth talking about in terms of actual special moves. One that is... The only other one that's really worth talking about, in my opinion, is... Return counter off. After throw. Well, more specifically after back throw. Stand HK. Stand HK will reach after back throw. This is important. Because, as we talked about before, standing HK does crush counter, which means if they press a button after throw, you can do stand HK, crush counter, dash up and get a combo. The caveat to this is that it will not beat a 3-frame button. So if they wake up and press a 3-frame button, you will get knocked out of stand HK. If they press a 4-frame or anything slower, you will crush counter it. So it's not perfect, but it is generally a good tool to make people block after back throw. That's if they quick rise. Obviously, if they don't quick rise after back throw, you can just dash up and do whatever you want. That is it, really, for Oki setups. Like I said, there's she gets a lot of Oki from her moves, but it's really something that I want you to experiment with yourself because I don't want this video to go on any longer than it already has. Let's go into the final thing that I want to, well, second last thing that I want to talk about, which is general game plan. Juri's general game plan is, like I said, you want to stay in the neutral. You want to live in this distance right here is really Juri's ideal living space. Because she can hit them with so many moves, but they can't hit her. And a lot of her moves come out quite fast, so even if they have a move which reaches that far, they're really not going to be able to contend with it. So this is the optimal living space for Juri, is right around this distance here. If you can keep the game neutral, if you can force them to fight in the neutral, and you can force them to live at this distance, you will stand a very strong chance of winning. Because they just can't compete with buttons like this, and buttons like this, and harassment with this, and so forth. Alright, versus lame characters. As I mentioned before, Juri has trouble against characters who want to play lame. So I'm not talking specifically about characters like Guile or Dalsim. Those are matchups which work quite well for Juri if she can shut down their fireballs. It doesn't make them easy, but it does make them better. I'm talking about characters who or players specifically who like to play very slow, very methodical. They want to play the block punish game where they just wait for you to attack and then they go for the optimal punish if they know you're minus. Juri has a lot of trouble opening these people up because, as I said, she has very few plus frames at her disposal, which means that she has very few opportunities to pressure someone. Those are not fun. I can't really give you a lot of advice because it's going to come down to a match-by-match basis. Best advice would be, in those situations, is put them in situations where they have to block in ways that they don't want to. So if they're going to sit there and wait for you to press a button, this is where low fireball comes in very handy. Because low fireball is a tool you can walk up afterwards. And like I said, it does have very minimal blocks done, but you can press buttons afterwards, and most of the time people will respect it. So, as far as neutral goes, low fireball is a very strong tool for just making people frustrated, because you have this tool which stays at the screen for a while. You can walk up behind it, you can do whatever you want after it, and it's still -2 on block. And obviously, as I said, you get to... It's Juri's free approach tool. It's Juri's free stay away from me tool. People will very rarely try to contest this. If they try to contest it, they will try to jump in. If they try to jump in, you'll be ready for it because Juri has obviously anti-air. She has 3 different kinds of anti-airs if they try to jump in, and she also has an air throw. I didn't mention the air throw because it's an air throw. It works like every other air throw in the game. So, the skies are really a bad place to go when Juri is throwing a low fireball. Alright. What to do... In terms of V-Reverse, I would say don't be afraid to spend it, because regardless of the V-Trigger you're using, you have 2 bars. And if you're using V-Trigger 1, you might think to yourself, oh cool, I can get 2 V-Triggers per round. You're not going to get 2 V-Triggers per round. The amount of times I get 2 V-Triggers per round is shockingly low. Like, very, very, very low. Because when you activate V-Trigger, 1 or 2 things is really going to happen. Either you're going to win because it's V-Trigger 1 and you're using it properly and you're making them frustrated and you're making them press buttons, and the last thing they want to do is press buttons when you have V-Trigger 1 active, or you're so low on health that you're probably going to die, regardless. So honestly, probably 1 in every 50 matches I might get 2 V-Triggers per round. It's so low just because of that factor. Because again, even if you do have a lot of life when you activate V-Trigger 1, if you've used it properly, and excuse me, you've got them on low health, by the time you get V-Trigger 2, they're already dead. So it doesn't matter. So don't be afraid to spin the V-Reverse. I don't V-Reverse probably as much as I should. Don't be afraid to V-Reverse. Don't be afraid to V-Shift, because you will still probably get 1 V-Trigger per round. Alright, what to do versus rushdown characters. We talked about characters who are lane and want to play defensively. Against characters who are very aggressive, especially if they're designed to be played that way, like your Karins, your Akumas, things like that. Even Ken can be frightening if he's played the right way. Number 1 rule of Juri is do not get cornered. Juri does not live very well in the corner. She just doesn't. Because it's very hard to get your stores when you're in the corner. Because you're obviously you're more exposed when you're trying to get them. Trying to get a V-skill store in the corner is virtually impossible. So it cuts down a lot of Juri's options when she can't get her stores. Juri is very much a toothless tiger when she doesn't have any kind of stores.
Let's get it started.
So it's very frightening in that regard. So just do not get cornered. 100% is the best advice I can give you. Get out of the corner at all costs when you're playing against rushdown characters. Be patient, yes. Don't take that advice to mean you have to get out as fast as you can. But at the same time, don't try to live here. She's not like Sagat, who can just live in the corner and still be a very effective character. She's not. She needs freedom of movement and space to be able to work a game. So, number 1 rule, do not get cornered against aggressive characters. Number 2 rule against aggressive characters is just be aware of their frame data, because people who like to play aggressively, if they see you not punishing their moves which are minus or even just not advantageous on block, they will go for stuff that they shouldn't.
Let's get it started.
They will not respect you until you make them respect you. So, you know, if you're playing against a Ken character who likes to do full screen Tatsus to approach, full screen Tatsu for Ken is -4, you have to jab check that. You know? You can do it right. There we go. I've not been hitting any of these combos first try all night. Good tutorial! So make sure you make them respect you, because Juri is a character, like I said, who has a lot of trouble on offense, so if you can't make them respect you on neutral and in defense, you're going to have a bad time. Alright, always vary your approach. This goes not so much for neutral, because neutral there's just not much they can really do about Juri if you're playing her at the right ranges. You can do this all day. If they don't have a button that can punish this, you can do it all day. It doesn't matter. Varying your approach, though, does become very important when you're spending resources. So if you're spinning fireballs, make sure you're not always spinning them in the same block strings, because otherwise you become predictable. More to that, do not do the same Feng Shui engine strings over and over again. I am guilty of this. Right? That was not V-skill. That was not V-trigger, that was V-skill. My go-to string is stand medium kick and stand heavy kick. because it's quite cheap in terms of the meter usage, and it's quite confirmable, so if they get hit by it, you can cancel that, or better still, if you have the meter for it, it cancels in super. That was a buff that she got in the previous patch. It was, I think it was one of 3 buffs that she got in the previous patch. And I think one of those was not even a buff, it was just a change. Anyway, point being is that it's very versatile, but if I keep doing this over and over and over again, and they keep blocking it because they know that they're waiting for me, that I'm waiting for them to press a button, I'm just wasting meter. So you need to be able to come up with different approaches. You need to be able to go for things like sweep in a low fireball. Because if a lot of people, when they see sweep, they go, oh cool, it's my turn to sweep you back, when it's not because you cancelled a low fireball. Things like that. Always vary your approach. If they are blocking your string, if they block this, walk up and throw them. Or start out with doing, like, if they're blocking on wake up, start doing this. And then after, a few times, you might then go into, say, meme kick. Things like that. So, and then from there, you can go into the full combo. Things like that. So always just mix things up. I'm not going to harp on this anymore, just keep that in mind. Lastly, just try to frustrate your opponents. As I said, Juri's #1 tool is her ability to shut down fireballs. Always get ready to shut down fireballs. Familiarize yourself with the sound that a fireball makes. And the reason that I say this is that it is scientifically proven that human beings can react faster to sounds than they can to visuals. So if you know what a sonic boom sounds like when it comes out, you do not have to wait to see the sonic boom on screen. You can hear the audio cue and react to that. More importantly, when people see you reacting to fireballs, they will try to bait you. Instead of, like a lot of Guile players, when they see you punishing their sonic booms, what they'll do is they'll stand at the edge of the screen and start doing this. They'll just start throwing out random buttons at the edge of the screen, punctuated by the occasional boom. Because they are testing your ability to react to the boom and not a button, because they know that if you press a button and they block, they'll get a full punish on the V skill. So I had a terrible time punishing sonic booms until I learned to punish the sound and not the visual. That is the biggest tip I can give you for punishing fireballs. Alright, last thing to talk about. This video has gone on long enough. Best matchups. Best and worst matchups to Juri. Best matchups to Juri. She doesn't have any! Juri, in my opinion, does not have any good matchups. It's very depressing. She did have good matchups. Kage was a good matchup till they buffed him. Ryu was a good matchup, or at least an even matchup till they buffed him. There's a lot of characters that were a good matchup until they buffed them. Most of Juri's matchups are 5-5 or worse. So if you don't know what 5-5 means, it means that she wins half the time. In a set of 10 matches, she'll win half the time. I do not believe she has good matchups. Like I said, V skills and Roiden Satsu's will make some matchups like Dalsim and Guile easier. Even Akuma. Like Akuma can't throw air fireballs for free approaches, things like that. But that said, even Dalsim, Guile, and Akuma are all very viable characters even without their projectiles. They just become less effective. It doesn't make it a bad matchup for them, it just makes it more of an even matchup.
Let's get it started.
So that is something to be aware of. In terms of bad matchups to Juri, Juri is a bad matchup when she has to fight anyone who can either control neutral better than she can, or is a character who is designed to be weak to rushdown when Juri does not have rushdown. So G is a very good example. G is a character who can operate at the same kind of range that Juri does. So their neutral ranges are about the same. But G's offense is terrifying, but his defense is very weak. But Juri cannot take advantage of G's weak defense because she is terrible at sustained offense. So that alone makes it a bad matchup for Juri. The only good part of that matchup is that she doesn't have to deal with this gold orb bullshit. She can V-skill and EX Roiden Satsu through all of his gold orbs.
Let's get it started.
But it's still not a good match. It is not a fun time fighting a good G player, for sure. Other bad matchups would be Bison, because Bison, it's not not terrible, but again, Bison's a character who can play defensively if he wants to, and his neutral is just better than Juri's. It's just they operate at the same range, but his neutral is better. Birdie, same problem. Operate at the same range, his neutral is better. Monat has a Monat, oh boy, where do I start? Monat is way better in the neutral. She is a character who is designed to absolutely dominate neutral. Which means that Juri has a terrible time getting past that. The only time that's a good matchup for Juri is that even though Juri's rushdown is very weak, when Monat loses her orb, it doesn't matter. Monat's defense is so bad when she doesn't have her orb that even Juri's rushdown becomes good. So if you play against Monat, your #1 goal is to make her lose her orb. If she throws out her orb, do not let her get it back. Under any circumstance. But beyond that, if the Monat player can hold into their orb, you're gonna have a bad time. Poison, again, it's just a character who's designed to rule neutral and has better range than Juri. Even like Juri and Poison have the same flip kick, but Poison's flip kick is way better than Juri's is. Because hers has a hitbox on the way down, Juri's doesn't. Things like that. Her EX version is hard to react to, Juri isn't. So, yeah, there's definitely a lot of characters. Any character who can either rush Juri down or contest neutral better than she can is going to be a bad time. Dalsim, not so much. You would think Dalsim would be a bad matchup for Juri, but because he relies very heavily on fireballs as part of his game, he is less of a threat. It is more a tedious matchup when you fight Dalsim, because it's really each player waiting for the other person to make a mistake. Alright, so that's it. Thank you very much, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this made sense. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them in the comments below, and I will do my best to answer them for you. This is all very stream of consciousness. I did have a list for it, but hopefully it wasn't too garbled. No combos in this video for two reasons. One, this has got to be like 40 or 50 minutes by now. Second of all is that I just don't think that it's really worth doing. If you do want to see a combo video, I can do one, but there's going to be a price. I want you to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. That way you will be ready to watch the video when it comes out. Do all those things and let me know in the comments below that you want a combo video, and I will make one for you. But beyond that, that's going to be the end of this. Like I said, if you have questions, let me know in the comments, but that's it. Kisses, hugs, belly rubs. I will see all of you very soon.